Hello and welcome to another episode of the freshly renamed Conversations with Coaches podcast. Don't worry, we're still drinking coffee around here. The caffeine is still important to us, especially here in the morning. I am your host, Kevin, well caffeinated, as you can probably tell. And today I have the pleasure of speaking with Ty Hammond. Ty is an executive, team, and leadership coach, founder of One Mountain Leadership, and creator of the True Leadership Approach. He works with people who are committed to their growth as both a leader and as a human being, to learn how to consistently transform what holds them back into the confidence, capacity, and presence of true leadership. We're going to talk more about that. We're going to talk more about Ty. We're going to talk more about everything, and we're going to do it all in 15-ish minutes, if I'm good. Ty, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Kevin.
All right, let's get back to your beginning, what I cheekily like to refer to as the superhero origin story of you as a coach. Yeah. How did you maybe discover or realize that you were a coach in practice, if not in name? And then how did you go from that realization to starting a coaching business and what you're doing today?
Great. Yeah, thank you. Well, it's interesting because I think, well, first of all, I'll say that I am an individual executive coach doing one-on-one work, but I sort of started that later in my career. So my career started 10 years prior, before I really started even doing one-on-one individual coaching work, was starting to work with groups and with teams, right? So my first passion was really this generative collective wisdom and magic that occurs in relationships with groups. So that's really where I cut my teeth, so to speak, professionally, right? And I've got a master's degree in social work, and I worked with the Ford Foundation and did lots of consulting that way. And I have always super been drawn to relationships, right? The power of relationships, how we relate. Now, without going too far into it, I'll just say that I had several very important things happen along my professional journey where I learned very distinctly that what matters less is what you do, and what matters so much more is how you do it, right? So the relationships, how people are actually working together. So I actually saw several and was able to perceive and sort of witness several very high stakes and high risk and high potential projects just completely fail because of the inability of people to really work together. So that's what sort of brought me to the group coaching side. On the personal side, the one-on-one coaching, there's a reason why I waited so long. And I will say that sort of brings me back to the sort of origin story, is that, the work that I do individually with people is, it's deep, and I think a lot of coaches will offer that. The work that I like to say, there's really no distinction between personal and professional development. And, the approach that I've worked with here or developed here, called the True Leadership Approach, I like to almost make this distinction. There's like therapy, which is sort of like looking back towards the past. There's coaching almost, which sort of like looks up towards the future and where you want to go. And this True Leadership Approach is really about learning how to be in the present moment with whatever is happening. And what I've discovered in my own work, through my work with the teacher, is that the more that I'm able to do that, the more that my own capacity, confidence, and presence really increases as well, which I believe is absolutely fundamental to leadership in general. So, just a little bit more specifically, my journey started with, as many people's does, right, my own path of challenge and hardship. I lost my mother when I was 4 years old. I had a very unique, way of being raised, and I had an entire, up to 25 years of my life completely, plagued, I would say, by shame and self-doubt and self-judgment and things that made it really, really hard to be in the world. And so, I had a deep prayer for my life, and I fortunately ended up finding a teacher, and it took me some years, but I ended up actually eventually listening to her, and through about like 12 years working with her, and consistently being engaged in the leadership conversation, and so interested in just consciousness and adult human development and how we grow, over the years, this way of being essentially just in this work in the world just happened. And I would say there was a choice point moment in which my fiance said to me, when I was thinking about finally doing the one-on-one coaching work, which I had been, reticent to do until I really felt ready.
Hmm.
And she just said, sweetie, it's the conversations that you're having anyways. They're the conversations that you always want to have.
He's wise.
Just just continue having them, So I would say that's the origin story, smooshed down into, I don't know how long that was.
That was a condensed 120 seconds or so.
Right on.
It's lovely. And I love that. That is the chef's kiss of advice. It's like, you feel like, and I feel maybe like we're a similar type of person. You feel like you're waiting for the conditions to be correct and for you to be ready, like out of respect for what you're endeavoring to do. You want to be careful because you care. But then sometimes there's at least with me, I might be projecting a little bit, but to wait too long, to get stuck in that cycle of preparing and waiting and being careful, but then letting myself fall into a stasis, a sort of holding pattern. And that piece of advice is perfection. You're already doing it. This thing that you're waiting for is already happening. All you have to do is catch up.
Yeah.
Let your brain catch up.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I would say, so I hold that the piece that you're mentioning about, certainly the all of the whatever comes up, the self-doubt, the vulnerability of putting yourself into the world, and those reasons for holding back. And I also want to say, and this is a big part of the journey, which I wasn't able to get to a little bit, is that, there was a particular point in my path in which I really thought that I had all the answers. And so through that, what I would say, just sort of part of my construct or personality, I was teaching people, but I wasn't really present. It was from really this manifested, created part of my personality that I had created. And that ended up creating a lot of issues or challenges. And it was required a lot of deep humbling, I would say, by the universe to recognize the extent of, and this is part of the work that I offer, to recognize my own self-deception, the extent of my own self-deception. And so part of my waiting to engage in that one-on-one work was really ensuring that I had, if I'm going to create something called the true leadership approach, by the way, this is about really accessing what is true, what is actually true in me, to what extent can I access that and then live from that. And, to me, that's no small thing. And there's no way that I could actually be doing that, right, from a place of my own self-deception, which I had already come across before. So just really holding the responsibility of that, given that there's lots of different kinds of work out there, lots of different people that want to. So it was just, I would just say, really holding back until I really felt truly at least ready enough where I could trust enough that I wasn't going to do harm. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. It reminds me that it's not unlike being a parent, where you want to be as ready as you can be, with the understanding that you can never be ready, ready. But it's like that work that you do as you're in the lead up to becoming a parent it's so important. And I appreciate so much the parents, the soon to be parents, that take it so seriously. I have a good friend of mine right now who just had his first child. And they were so invested and engaged in being great parents, partially maybe because they're having children a little bit later in life, as opposed to like, early 20s, where if I try to imagine myself having a child when I was like 22, and I can't. Or I can and don't want to, but I just said that commitment to doing everything that you possibly can to be ready, along with the understanding that you'll never be ready.
Yeah. I think that's maybe the distinction there, is like, I wanted to be ready enough where I could be confident that I wasn't going to do harm. Not confident enough that I wasn't going to make mistakes, because I'm still not there, and I hope actually that I never get to a place where I'm so confident that I think I'm not going to make mistakes, because then I've just totally lost the plot.
Yep, that's a red flag. You said something earlier, like towards the beginning of our discussion, about the distinction about with the way that therapy will often be looking to the past and coaching a little bit to the future. And that reminded me of something that another coach said to me, a paradigm that I really, really appreciate, which I'll use to segue into my next question. They like to think of therapy more like archaeology and coaching more like architecture. And I really liked that, because there's a great deal of unearthing when it comes to therapy, sort of like, you're there with the backhoe, but also like the delicate broom, you're digging deep, you're finding things that are old and delicate and kind of processing them and understanding the past better. And then with coaching, a lot of times I like archaeology as an analogy for that, because there's a lot of blueprint to it. There's framework. There's, we've learned how to build these kinds of structures. Let's do it together. Here's the plan we're going to work off of. And then you're also kind of like a general contractor, maybe, where you're like, working together to build this home or this building or this office or this whatever. So all that said, who do you coach these days, and how do you coach them? What's your role as the architect in people's lives, business, professional, personal? Obviously, they're kind of, underneath at the root, they're all the same. But yeah, who do you coach, and how do you coach them these days in your business? Obviously, you have the true leadership framework, but let's talk a little bit more about that.
Great. If it's okay, I just want to talk really quickly about that. I love the archaeology architect thing.
Yeah.
And you're right. So I would say there's a lot, and I'm sure that a lot of people talking about, for example, like the word mindset, right?
Yes.
And a mindset being like a framework through which we see and understand and experience the world. And then there's these frames from the past. And then there's this potential to actually create frames of how we see the world in the future. And you can actually architect, right, your future. And I would say my work is distinctly different from that. This is not about architecting anything. This is actually about identifying what those frames are, seeing them, and disassembling them.
Ooh, okay. Talk more about that. Yeah.
So if a mindset is a way that you see the world, the work of true leadership isn't about seeing the world through any particular frame. It's actually about experiencing what is happening in the present moment. And, from my experience, what can happen, the deeper that we are able to be seated in the present moment, then our experience will inform a mindset that need not be created in order for us to see something in a different way. So, I like to say that seeing something differently will help it, and it will. Like, you can create mindsets that will change your experience. I don't call them transformational. I call those reformational. You're reforming, reframing the way that you see the world. Okay. A transformation is dissolving, a disassembling of those constructs so that you actually are able to experience without that frame. Now, from that deeper, direct experience can arise from your experience, not from a concept of some coach or somebody that you heard on YouTube or some book that you read that you think this is the mindset that I should have, and so I'm going to work on creating it so I can see the world through that way. It actually, a mindset arises from the direct lived experiences that you've had. So your mindset comes from and informs, right? Or your experience informs your mindset rather than your mindset informing your experience. So it's an important distinction, I would say.
No, yeah, I love that. Yes, that is very well conceived and also very well explained. Yeah,
I appreciate that feedback. I appreciate that feedback, because I've been, I'm curious as to how this lands. Sometimes I'm up in my, I'm like, is this really, so I appreciate that.
No, I simultaneously have like a dozen different offshoots to talk more about that concept you just described, and I
can come to your question
with it.
Yes, yeah, I can. So I just wanted to make that distinction because it sort of sets up who I'm really working with, and I would say, I work with executives, C-level for sure, and VP, and directors and managers, really my focus is really working with people that are leading teams. And that is because I also have this deep passion of working with groups as well. And I see leaders that work with teams as a leverage point in organizations. So I deeply believe in the concept of leverage in systems, which is one place, or if you can get to the core and make one small change, that it can make a big change in everything. So I see that people that are leaders of teams are a leverage point in organizations for transformational change. So that's the sort of positional piece. The other piece is I would say, and my work is it's not necessarily for everyone. It is for people that are truly committed to doing the deep inner work of, being willing to look at what they have been unwilling to see, right? It's like uncovering and being it takes courage to do this sort of stuff. It's not just about learning to see the world in a new way. It's about being able to confront the way that you are looking at the world in ways that are holding you back, right?
Which is terrifying.
which can be terrifying. I like to say it's hard until it's not, so with practice things can get easier. Yeah,
absolutely.
But willing to do this deep inner work. So generally the folks that I'm working with are called to and really already see that inextricable link between personal and professional development. The way that I'm offering my services right now, I have one-on-one coaching for certain, and I actually have just launched my True Leadership Foundations Mastermind. So I have been developing the True Leadership approach over the past 5 years with individual clients. It's been really working incredibly, and I am so incredibly excited to be bringing this to a group format because it's really this incredibly generative space where people get to learn and engage in this stuff as a community and really have that support, that mutual learning. And so the way that looks like is, individual modules that people lead themselves through at their own pace. And then there's a weekly, 2 to 3 hour call where everybody sort of can call in at their leisure for support.
Nice. I love that. It's such a good hybrid, not hybrid. It's such a good evolution of taking the magic and the deep work of the one-on-one experience and growing it to be something a little bit, so that, because obviously the one-to-one, I mean, this when you're in that moment where it's just you and somebody else and you're talking and you're sharing and you're doing the deep work and you see the light bulb go off. Yeah. And there's nothing like it. There's just nothing like it. But there's only 24 hours in the day. There's only so much of you to go around, and so you want to and your quest, and this is true of many coaches, and I can tell it's true of you. You want to help as many people as you can. You really want to do that, but without compromising the deep work, the value that is necessary.
Yeah, precisely. And I actually feel it's within this, group model that I'm so excited about. It's been amazing. I've got, my first, it's an open enrollment, so people can sort of be in at any time. It's not like a cohort model. So folks can come in today, but I've got my first, group of people moving through this. And I myself have learned this way as well. And the learning just deepens so much. And I think that there's this deep yearning for connection and for community and for knowing that we're not alone. That the experience that I'm having, that I'm struggling with, it may be different in content, but it's really the same stuff. And that, even in and of itself, even if all we were doing in our calls wasn't even based on a framework that I have been putting together based on what I've been learning for the past 15 years or whatever it is, even if we just got together and we just said, here's what's happening for me, and everybody was able to just say that, there would be such immense benefit from just that.
And I love the way you almost not edited yourself, but you said feeling first, and then you went to knowing, and just in just a snapshot, just in a second and a half, I feel like that encapsulates so much about what the end result of such a group coaching experience is like. You get the feeling, you begin to let yourself feel that you are not alone, but that very quickly becomes a knowing.
Yeah, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say that certainty is foundational. It's the foundation. It's a springboard. With that certainty, you can plant your feet, and you can make your moves in the way and live your life in the way that you want. I love it. And I find that it's every time it's discovered, every time it's experienced, it's magical. Whether it's me, whether it's someone close to me, whether it's a complete stranger, like it's just something about experiencing it and seeing it happen is just wonderful. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. And yeah, I'm brought back. There's a teaching from the Kogi people, which is to feel is to know, which I love the deconceptualization of knowing, and that knowing, true knowing, in the way that I talk about the word knowing in the true leadership approach, isn't a conceptualization. And it's not, having a feeling of like, oh, I know this, and now I'm going to collapse it into certainty that I take outside of this present moment. The knowing is actually requiring of me to feel it in each and every single moment. So I like to say that certainty is the death of clarity. Clarity is a knowing.
Ooh, man, dropping bombs. It's beautiful turns of phrase that encapsulate so much in such a, it's, you know what? I'm so like, I could do this with you for hours. I could feel it, totally. But I need to pull myself back and just, well, first of all, I'm going to thank you. I'll probably thank you again later. I thank you already. I'll thank you probably numerous other times. I'll probably send you a thank you message later on. Thank you for sharing these messages. Thank you for sharing yourself. Thank you for the work that you do. Please tell me and everyone who's listening where they can find out more about you, where they can connect with you, where they can chat with you, where they can get to know with you and get more of this.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much. Well, I'm primarily working through LinkedIn right now as a primary social media outlet. And and we didn't get to the challenges part, and I will just say just really quickly that I'm sort of new on LinkedIn and wanting to bring my message out into the world. And so anybody that would reach out, connect with me there, I'd love to start a conversation, have a real connection. I'm just sort of learning the ropes there. It's really exciting. You can also visit my website, onemountainleadership.com. Awesome.
Yeah. It's like the great challenge of this podcast is that it's designed to be short. And we've already been talking for over a half an hour.
Oh, wow. Really? Oh,
yes. That is one of the most delightful challenges is like, I'm looking at the clock and I'm realizing that I'm being a bad podcast host, but I'm enjoying myself too much. And I feel like you were too. This has been a great conversation. We're just going to have to do a part 2 is all there is to it.
It sounds wonderful, Kevin. I've absolutely very much enjoyed chatting with you this morning as well. Thank you so much for having me.
And to everyone within earshot of this podcast, find Ty, learn more. If you get a chance, chat with him, DM him on LinkedIn, connect. LinkedIn's a great place to build and grow these kinds of relationships. Chef's kiss. We will talk to you again very soon.